Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the VR Download, a weekly show recorded live in the Upload Virtual Studios, where we bring you the latest news, reviews, comments, and interviews from the VR industry. My name is Kyle, Operations Manager at Upload, and let's meet the rest of today's panel. Starting over here on my far left.
Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton, Managing Editor.
Hi, I'm David, Senior Editor at Upload VR.
All right. We don't have Jamie. Okay. So, Denny, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Denny, the CEO and Creative Director at Cloudhead Games.
All right. And Jamie may or may not appear later. We don't know. So this is this episode of the VR Download. So let's take a look at today's news stories for the week. Our first news piece. You'll have to wait a little longer to jump into Zero Gravity on Oculus Quest. Ready at Dawn this week announced that its upcoming port of Echo Arena to the standalone VR headset has been delayed. It's now coming sometime in 2020. There's no specific timing beyond that date. What do we know about this, David?
Not very much. I know that we announced Echo Arena in the VR showcase back at E3, so that's when it was first announced with Ready at Dawn, and I got to play it at OC6. It seems like a pretty capable port. I mean, it's about what you would expect. It's the same game. Visually there are some downgrades, obviously, because it is a Quest version of the game, but the gameplay seems to pretty much be intact. The only thing that I noticed is reaching behind my back to grab the disc or throw the disc or something like that sometimes would be a little finicky, but it seems like a good port, and I was really impressed with it whenever I tried it. We have a teleportation situation going on.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, when people drop out, sometimes it moves desks for some reason. So
I'm
Jamie
good here.
might come back. If that happens, you might teleport back. But either way, it's all good. Yeah, so I guess they're just waiting to polish it more. I'm also curious to know if they're doing this to give it more room to be, highlighted as a release, because I know Onward is coming soon. I know Pavlov is coming soon. I know Contractors is coming. All those are coming to Quest. And those are all kind of similar multiplayer competitive games. So maybe they're trying to make more room for it. I think Population 1 is even coming to Quest too. And so there's a lot of big multiplayer games coming to Quest very soon. So maybe they're just trying to give it more room to kind of stand out, and release closer to Lone Echo 2's launch window is probably what they're trying to do as well.
So I'm curious, Denny, if you have any wisdom or input on this, because a game that was originally designed for PC that's trying to go to Quest, from a development standpoint, do you understand that challenge?
Yes. So when you say, like, I don't know, there's so many games that could come to Quest, but it's a extraordinary optimization challenge, obviously. So I'm always a bit dubious when I hear rumors of things coming to Quest, because there's just a massive engineering overhead. And if you're not kind of building for Quest from the beginning of production, you're probably not going to be able to make it on Quest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ian, what are your thoughts?
Without an extraordinary amount of money put into the effort, I guess is probably the other answer there.
Well, right. Yeah. Money fixes everything, doesn't it?
Money and time, generally, yeah.
Ian, what are your thoughts, Ian?
Well, that's going to be an interesting title that we'll have to see how it works over the Oculus Link cord, because Quest owners that really want that could theoretically hook up their VR PC and play that game via the Oculus Link on the Quest. But that's the game that really benefits from having the tether gone. So being able to have that wireless tether gone. So it's kind of a bummer that some players will be launching this game probably over that link for the first time, when it's so much freer to feel wireless.
So, Jamie, you just popped in, not knowing what we're talking about. What is your opinion?
My opinion is, why did we make a podcast in VR? It's really hard. literally 5 seconds before we went on air, that I got the red light in the middle of the headset, and I was like, "But I haven't had any problems all day." Boom, gone. Okay,
Yeah.
fine, great.
Yeah,
Anyway, yeah.
Ian, you might want to try like unplugging and plugging your mic back in or something. It's very robotic sounding, and people are noticing the crackling sound. But yeah, if you want to go on, Kyle, we have a related topic: audio fixes for SteamVR.
So I'll help
Yes,
him.
we do.
Oh, sorry.
So an update to Valve's SteamVR rolls out a number of long-awaited changes, including the way the software handles audio. In the new SteamVR version 1.8, SteamVR will now select the appropriate input and output audio devices for the active headset on startup.
And that
This
is
is
a feature
according-
that we could use right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's according to the release notes posted by Valve. And then upon exit, SteamVR will restore audio devices to their previous state.
Nice. That's awesome. I
and,
know for me especially, maybe not especially, just me specifically, whenever it comes to VR, I'm always having to juggle my default audio devices to make sure, especially if I want to use a headset with a good mic like I am now, or use the default stuff in whatever headset I'm using. It's Steam and Oculus all have their default settings, then Windows has a default setting, and then it's such a mess. And I mean, anything that makes that easier would be great. I don't know how much I would trust that until I actually get to try it and use it. But I mean, it's very frustrating with the current way things are.
well, I mean, so many of us have multiple microphones, multiple sources for
Yeah.
audio, video, webcams randomly pick up. I don't know. Denny, did you have struggles? Do you have struggles with all of the hardware plugged into your computer, constantly trying to figure out which audio you're using?
I mean, so it might be a bit unfair to say we have a number of different things plugged into our computers at any given time, so we burn out a lot of USB ports. Quite honestly, we've had a few computers kind of go down because of such a broad range of hardware trying to kind of deal with it. In terms of like audio quality, so right now I'm in a Rift S. I don't actually know how it sounds to you guys from your end. It
sounds pretty good to me.
Fantastic.
I think.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So I mean, so I've noticed, obviously the Index, Valve Index has really great audio for this type of application. Rift S seems to hold its own as well. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, absolutely. I'm just looking for opinions on it because it is a struggle. Ian, are you in a better place now with microphone?
Yeah, funny. You tell me. Does it sound any better? Denny actually sounds really weird to me. Cool. So I actually hooked up the Oculus Quest's accessory earbuds to the Rift S. So like I've got one ear in from the Oculus Quest earbuds.
Whatever you just did, you made yourself robotic again.
Yeah, whatever just happened made your voice go back to how it was earlier.
I don't know. Like, did I hit the mic with the
microphone? I have no idea what just happened there.
You know, it's funny because we have a commenter here. Someone actually said in the chat that all of the issues they see on our podcast has made them more sympathetic to developer issues and delays.
Oh,
so
that's a good point.
There you go.
There we go.
Now you understand. This is what people have to go through. This stuff isn't plug and play and easy to do. But that's what makes it fun.
Christopher says "Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto" to Ian.
Yeah,
it should just be.
This is where I wish I had arms because then I could do the robot and it would make sense. You know,
well, it should just be Ian's default. You know, it's his skin. It's his voice skin.
Yeah, voice skin. There we go.
A voice skin. Uh-oh.
I don't know.
Trademark that bad boy right now.
Okay.
There you go.
I'll rejoin.
See you in a sec.
Oh man. So what do you think?
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, does anybody else want to put any input into the audio stuff from Steam? Because Steam's done a lot of updates over the last year or so. Is this what we want Steam to be updating? I mean, is this the most important thing?
Well, there was a definite hardware knock on there, like in kind of just different iterations of the Index hardware, where they're having a real tough time with kind of the Windows environment and how cleanly audio would switch over. especially for the headset to go to headphones. You always kind of have that struggle of going into your Windows sound management tools and have to manually apply things. But it didn't seem to happen to everybody, so it was a real weird issue. They definitely needed to fix it, and I'm very glad they did because it was a pain in the ass.
Good.
Yeah, and then for, if you're using a program like OBS as often as I do with streaming or capturing footage, that just adds another layer of complication to things, because sometimes OBS is listening to a different source than my default source that what this is playing to. I've literally had it before where my headphones themselves split into two sources somehow. And I had Discord going to one source in the audio manager and OBS hearing a different source that were the same. It was so weird.
See, the funny thing is, if you wanted it to do that, you wouldn't be able to make it do
That's
that.
true. That is exactly true.
I'm using the Rift S microphone. Is it better now?
Oh, wow. All we heard was... Yeah.
No? Oh my god. I'll restart the whole system and see when I get back from being a
Greg's
robot.
VR says Ian has confidence issues now. Oh man, called out. Put on
Ian
the
literally
spot.
just melted in VR. I love it. I love it. Well, let's move on to the next topic. HoloLens 2, Microsoft's second enterprise level AR headset, is now shipping. Yay. Wasn't sure when that was going to happen. Actually, nobody did. Just last week, I read an article that said we have no idea. Maybe it went back to 2020. The HoloLens 2 was introduced at Mobile World Congress earlier in the year. This new version brings with it a sleeker design, wide field of view, and an assortment of other improvements like gesture recognition and eye tracking. The device costs $3,500. That's $3,500, which places it well into the realm of an enterprise device. Jamie, let's start over here with you. What do you think HoloLens 2? Yeah, we'll do the little head flip here. What do you think about the HoloLens 2? Have you had an opportunity to try this device?
Yeah, I was the one that tried it at Mobile World Congress. And everyone that knows me knows I'm not the biggest AR fan. Not that I don't believe it'll be like a fantastic piece of technology for enterprise
Man, why
in the
you
future.
gotta hate? Why you gotta hate?
Because VR's, in my opinion, VR is so much better, right? I like movies, I like entertainment, I like creation, and right now the space we're in, VR is way more the creative medium than the AR, right? So when I wrote my hands-on of the HoloLens 2, the thing I said was that is the first AR headset I could actually picture myself using, because even though it's still not like a giant leap from the first HoloLens, they make some strides in terms of things like comfort and accessibility that for me were always really important with the first HoloLens. I hated wearing that thing. It pinched my nose. It like tried to crush my skull. And so for me, just the difference in ergonomics was huge. Having said that, I'm not going to buy one because I don't have that kind of money sitting around. And like I said, there's probably not going to be any games for it. There's not really going to be much in the way of entertainment for it. It's very much right now an enterprise level device, which I entirely understand and entirely respect it as, but it's just not for, anyone sitting here, unless Denny has a secret HoloLens 2 sitting in his office right now.
No, my opinion of all that stuff is I still don't understand who it's for. Like, is it for consumers? No, it's too early. Is it for developers? Well, no, because there's no way I'm going to take a massive risk and spend $1 million on building an application for HoloLens. Why would I do that? That's ridiculous. There's no market. There's not going to be a market for a significant amount of time. I hear the same thing talked about often with whatever Apple is doing with their AR device. It's great that they're working towards that, but a lot of people are saying, oh, it's going to come out 2020. No way that's coming out 2020. I from talking to all my peers, there's so much work that they still have to do. Just the entire AR market as a whole, there is so much work. If we've learned anything from VR, it's that the uptick and the growth curve is very slow. I see the same things happening with HoloLens, with whatever Apple's doing with Magic Leap. And there's also, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot in a little way, because as we saw with Magic Leap, there was this shroud of secrecy for so long that it ended up kind of hurting them in terms of what developers could do to enable the platform. And if you're not, as an AR company, hardware manufacturer, if you're not pumping money into generating content, you're in a losing battle situation, because there's no market and there's no way that I, as a developer, am going to pour any money into AR until I know that there's some kind of market to, release my products to. So personally, I feel like AR is 5 years away still. I am super excited for the technology. I think once it's nailed down properly and they have like an active opaque VR mode, that's really when things will be a complete game changer, because you can use it in both ways, and whoever does that first basically wins all of the battles. So, whether that's a Facebook doing their AR initiative, or if it's an Apple, one of those two companies is going to do it first, but it's definitely not coming next year.
Yeah.
You bring up a really great point. As a developer, you don't want to put effort and time and money into developing something for a piece of hardware that not a lot of people own. But then people don't want to buy a piece of hardware that doesn't have enough software for it. So that's the vicious cycle that we exist in right now.
Am I not a robot anymore?
No.
Oh, you sound wonderful.
Okay.
You're a real boy.
So, so the thing I want to add there is business use cases, right? Like that's where Magic Leap has refocused their effort, and that's the one developer I've heard from is if you're building a specific application for a specific business, and that business is paying you for that development up front, then there's possibly some single use cases for AR that way.
That's basically the only way you can develop anything in AR. Is by having a B2B solution where somebody's paying you.
Yeah, there are some very successful companies in the UK I know that are almost exclusively focused on AR at the moment, that started off in VR but are doing business use cases, and it's going really, really well for them. So, but to go back to the gaming thing though, how weird is it that on Magic Leap there's like an Insomniac game, and just no one's who knows how many people played that game, right? I mean, last year,
5.
Yeah. 5.
Well, I'm sure they were paid for it, right? Like, so.
Well, exactly.
So yeah, and
so
that's
And in that sense, they went down the Oculus Studios route, right? But they started it at such an early stage, which is really interesting. Like Oculus didn't release any premium game until they had premium consumer hardware, right? And then they released Lucky's Tale and everything. But right now, it feels like Magic Leap is DK1, and they're funding, Insomniac to release these big titles for it. And it's just a very bizarre situation.
Well, the HoloLens 1 did have several games, some of which were very appealing to me.
One of them that I thought was really interesting was Fragments.
Yeah,
that was the murder mystery game where there were like characters sitting on your couch and talking to you, and you had to go like actually look for clues in your own house. Like stuff like that was pretty cool. But and I remember Magic Leap has forever talked about this concept of like a ghost girl game where there's like a ghost haunting your house, which is really cool to me. There's some mobile AR games like that, like Night Terrors is one of them. They use your phone as like a portal to like see demons coming into your house. And I don't know. I mean, there are definitely game applications, but I do kind of agree that it's more of a business type thing, especially now.
Well, at $3,500, I mean, that's your enterprise only right now with that.
And there's one sort of a tangent. We have a question from someone in the chat from Lily. She wants to know what we think about the potential of there being like virtual schools that people could attend just in like the metaverse, kind of like Ready Player One, where you have a headset or an AR goggles or something, and the lessons come to you digitally rather than you having to go to a physical place. So I think that sounds like a cool concept, and I don't know if anyone's theorizing what that looks like, but I know that VR is used in schools right now, but having a full curriculum, I think, would be really amazing.
That company, VR Education, based in Ireland, I think, that's got the Engage platform. They're trying to build sort of interactive, things that really engage you in different ways. They did the Apollo 11 experience that was kickstarted a couple years ago.
Oh yeah,
and the Titanic as well.
Titanic is really good.
I want to talk about that. The Scream. There's a Steam version of the Scream where you can go face to face with that.
The
portrait,
painting.
and the environment around you changes to sort of make you familiar with the underlying themes and history of the artist. And it's a really powerful, intimate way of getting to know the artist behind various paintings, because I think that's actually one of several different pieces of software on Steam that you can
Does
find.
Google still do their VR expeditions program they did for elementary schools, where it was like VR
Yeah.
field trips and stuff?
I think they still do it. Like they're still actively partnering with schools on that. It's not like a platform that will grow in any way, I don't think, anytime soon.
Well,
but
Cardboard is. I mean, Cardboard's
it's open
done,
source.
right?
That's
So
true. Yeah, they open sourced it.
I think the cautionary tale that spools into all of that, especially as it relates to how accessible the platforms are for schools and whatever, is just what I've seen over the last 6 years is hardware companies pouring billions of dollars into hardware, but making a critical error when it comes to developing software in tangent with their hardware. And we're starting to see them pull out of that nosedive a little bit. Sony, Oculus, Valve, and HTC, to all different degrees, have been pouring more money into software development, or at least supporting developers who are building for the ecosystem. But it's like, in some ways, too little too late, depending on which OEM you are. But so when it comes to like AR or any new platform, like I've been a pretty vocal advocate about, you guys have to support the developer community, and not just who you think might be a good fit to build for your platform, because it's the people that are out there that are willing to take the risk and build an investment group around their company, or put their own money into building a thing, that are going to actually give you the most gains in terms of using and abusing your technology and making it actually mean something.
So Microsoft maybe should go back to developers.
Always. That should be the default. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's basically what the new head of Sony just said in an interview with GamesIndustry.biz. He just talked about how we're not really targeting any big first-party things for PS5 yet. We're not going to have anything like that initially. So instead, we want to go to the indies, go to the developers, and have you guys make stuff for us, and
Smart.
bring content so we have things ready for launch in the first year or so.
Yep.
And they recommitted to VR. He's like, yeah, we're really passionate about it, blah blah blah. So I mean, that's a sentiment that some companies have, which I do think is the right mindset for sure. But a lot of that mindset hasn't funneled down into the AR space yet. It's what it seems like.
I will say that both Sony and Oculus have had that kind of tidal shift in terms of refocusing some development dollars towards independent developers.
Yeah.
And it's been super encouraging. It's really this year they've kind of refocused, which is great.
Yeah, I think especially like in the Oculus side, they realize how much they need that for Quest, right? Like how much that platform's going to live and die by indie support at the end of the day. And probably the same for Sony too. You got to imagine right now they're talking about their PSVR 2 plans and how to get out the gates running with that. So
yeah, we've seen it. So the future looks pretty bright right now.
Cool.
For a change.
Yeah.
All right. So that was our discussion about HoloLens 2. Good stuff, guys. Let's talk about some news from HTC this week. The wireless adapter and compatibility pack for the Vive Cosmos is now available to purchase in the United States for $350. The compatibility pack includes a 21-watt power bank, along with a connection cable to connect the power bank and some pads to mount the bank to the headset. This means your Cosmos can become an untethered wireless system, providing you're willing to shell out for the adapter and your computer has a spare PCI Express slot. We need a spare PCI Express slot. So I actually have the wireless device for the Vive Pro, and I had to plug a card into my computer with an antenna, and it has to be able to sit out and see where you're at. Does anybody else have the wireless solution?
I've used that a couple times. It's such a. I didn't think it would be such a pain, but yeah, it's hard to make sure you've got that PCIe port. I lost a PC, and the next one doesn't have an easy access port, and so you can't go wireless. And it's a lot to take in. There's, even though it's called wireless, there's still like 3 wires on your head running from the battery pack and the transmitter and stuff. I don't know.
That's the total misnomer with that thing to me. It's always been kind of the thing I didn't like. Yes, it's wireless, but now I've got a huge cord still draping down to my pocket. That's not wireless. That's almost wireless.
Yeah.
But I mean, what it's doing is great in terms of mobility, but in terms of setup and ease of use and like no friction for the end user, it's still got a huge long way to go. That's why, what the Quest did ultimately was take away all those pain points at the cost of certain other things. But
one quick thing, I just want to answer someone in chat. I guess they tried pistol whip and they're confused why it's only one gun. That's the default way to play the game. If you go into the modifiers, you can turn on dual wielding, and there's other modifiers there too. So hopefully you heard that, Alan.
You get a penalty though for dual wielding because basically
makes it easier.
You've got more bullets.
Right.
Who said that comment, David?
That is Alan Pickering.
Take that, Alan Pickering. You've been pistol whipped.
Pew 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 pew.
Yeah. So for the wireless thing, the other thing too is it is so expensive. For that price, you can just buy a Quest. I mean, you wouldn't have the same library, but at least it's actually wireless. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just feel like if you're going to spend $700 on a Cosmos already, and then you're going to spend another $350 to make it wireless, that's just I don't see how that's worth it.
It makes you it makes you a little worried for the concept of the Cosmos as this modular device that HTC has built it as, right? Because it just, to me, it reeks of, well, when do I stop pouring money into this thing?
Yeah.
It's a toughie because the other big problem that I have is that when the wireless works, when the HTC wireless solution works for my Vive Pro, and I'm assuming the Cosmos will have the same kind of setup, is that when it works well. But when you start losing your line of sight, or you get too far away, or the signal degrades for whatever reason, you suddenly start to feel very pixelated. And I don't know if any of you who have tried this, when it's not working, it just you turn into super blocky.
Yeah, it takes you out of the experience.
Yeah, it breaks the immersion definitely.
I mean, that's the same issue I've had whenever I try to wirelessly connect the Quest and my PC with RiftCat or other options like that. It's just the compression and the wireless signals just generally across the board just aren't good enough yet. I think it's a stopgap, but we're not really to that point where it can be one-to-one wireless signals from a PC. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, wireless is hard. Yeah, it is. Just kind of like input used to be hard. Is input still hard? No, I don't know. Is it?
I'm still waiting. I mean, again, what Quest is doing with tracking fingers like Leap Motion is it's a super important step for VR. I think that the sooner we have that kind of input, the sooner developers can start wrapping their heads around what the best use case is for that. You're still going to want controllers for guns and whatever, or haptics, but like in terms of putting a headset on your mom or your cousin or whatever that's never had that first experience, because that's your first impulse when you get into VR is looking at your hands. Where's my hands? So the second that's just there natively, I think that's another significant kind of pain point removed for consumers.
I've lost track of the number of stock photos I've seen of like a Gear VR user looking at their hands. With that headset doesn't even have cameras, so I mean it's just so silly to see. Some people in chat are noticing your mouth isn't synced. Kyle, do you have Dash open?
I do not.
Oh well.
I
don't know. Or
it's just how thick your beard is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Well, what else does HTC have in terms of news here? It looks like HTC is now selling certified pre-owned first generation Vives for $399, the same price as a new Oculus Rift S.
Or Quest.
So the original Vive, HTC Vive, which was first released in April 2016, was $799 brand new. In 2017, it was reduced to $599 and finally to $499 in 2018. So prices are being slashed by HTC. would you recommend, David, that somebody go and buy one of these refurbished Vives?
The only scenario I would probably recommend it is if you want like a second headset of some kind, or you already have base stations and you're looking to replace your Vive or it's broken. I don't think if you're looking to get into VR, I would recommend getting a used Vive. I don't think that that's really worth it, especially with how high the fail rate is on some of these. It just I don't know if I would recommend that.
Yeah, the price point
Personally.
seems a bit crazy to me. Like if they're
Yeah.
gonna try to sell, refurbished overstock, it should be like 200. I don't know.
Yeah.
They need to
Yeah,
go
like
way
are you
lower
trying to
than
get
that.
rid of it or are you trying to make money? Like
Yeah.
Right, right. Well, we know that they made a ridiculous amount of them at one point. They were handing them away like candy at Halloween for developers. Well, that was the pre. But the standard Vive, I mean, $399 does seem a little high to me. I don't know, Ian. What do you think?
Yeah, I can't imagine a scenario other than maybe trying to get a low cost way to get the index controllers combined with the SteamVR tracking system because there's still some people out there that will refuse to use anything Facebook, and I can perfectly understand that. And so then you get this $400 headset outside-in tracking system that doesn't put cameras on your walls, and get the index controllers from Valve, and you've got some really incredible experiences you can have with 5-finger tracking. But that's doesn't seem a route practically anyone's going to go down. It's a big stretch there.
yeah,
But
and
just
if you're
like
willing to
250 should be the price point or something closer to that.
yeah, no, I fully
Mhm.
agree. Yeah.
Because if you did that system, if you bought it that way, you would have two sets of controllers. You'd have the original Vive ones plus the index controllers. But and you'd have a backup for whenever your chargers run out or you want to play a different type of game. But I can't imagine it.
Yeah, because the index controllers by themselves are 250, so you're looking at 650 to do that. When I mean, when you're getting up that high, like I just maybe I don't have the right sort of appreciation for outside in lighthouse tracking, but I don't see it being better than like a Rift S and a Quest almost in terms of price. Like that value seems much higher to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking HTC. You need to start selling these for. We'll be generous here. $249.
Yeah.
249 with the wireless thing built in.
Oh,
well.
Now you're blowing up their margins.
Yeah, now people are buying refurbished Vives to rip the wireless off and put on different headsets.
I've solved it. Get Alvin Graylin on the phone. I'll tell him.
There we go. Problem solved. Okay, I think that's enough for the news. Let's move on to release of the week. So, actually, Ian, since you're here, will you go ahead and do the honors and repeatedly say the title of a certain game for us?
Pistol Whip is out today on all major headsets except PSVR. So that's in the works, right, Denny?
Yeah.
So you can go. It's $25. Price of $25. It's got 10 tracks. I've put in something around 50 hours on Index and Quest. It's an extraordinary release. Congratulations.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
so, Denny, what is your take on Pistol Whip? Now, save all that for the interview. But, obviously we've been talking a lot about this game and a lot of people are excited to play it. What are your thoughts on releasing this game right now before the holidays? Do you have expectations for how it's going to do?
That's a really interesting question. We built Pistol Whip to kind of serve this time in the market, to make it fit where we thought people were interested in jumping in and playing. And we thought a lot about onboarding and what that looks like for kind of a new generation of VR players. And so the Quest in a lot of ways kind of laid the roadmap out for us in terms of what we were going to build for our next game. When we released preview copies to the press, I mean, maybe I should roll back. when we started sending this out, in a super kind of covert way to some of our peers, we weren't sure what to expect. But we got back this really incredible feedback saying, you guys are onto something here. This is going to be as big as Beat Saber and all this stuff. But you take that with a grain of salt, and you kind of walk it back from there and go, okay, well, that's our friends talking, right? Like let's cool off on that. Kept working on it, and then we started trickling it out to reviewers and streamers and stuff like that, just to get them in a play cycle and get them on the leaderboards, and then get kind of active feedback on what was and wasn't working. And we had a play test cycle with around 100 people prior to that, but the feedback we kept consistently getting back was that it was sticky and addictive and all those things you want to hear, right? And easy to understand. And so at some point, I think we all recognized there was something really strong there, that it will compete. We personally believe it will compete with Beat Saber. It will compete with Super Hot. It will compete with that tier of games. And because when we started with a core of fun. If we ever lost that core of fun, we knew we had already lost the battle. So we maintained fun as the biggest pillar of all. So right now we're feeling confident, but let's see how the next 6 months go. I guess we have a whole string of updates lined up for the product. It's a very much a live product that we're going to support really heavily over the next year. So we're pretty optimistic right now, and I hope we can maintain that optimism.
Well, good. And I look forward to hearing you and Ian talk a little further about it later in your interview. I'm curious, David, you had some other games that you've played this week that are in contention for release of the week. What do you got going on?
I wouldn't say in contention for release of the week. I think that's pretty clear. What the release of the week is, but other games that are notable that I want to shout out are Wolves in the Walls is now fully available. The third chapter of that came out today. It is a fantastic VR adaptation of the really classic Neil Gaiman children's book. Really, really, really well done. They do some incredible stuff with Lucy, the character that you interact with, that just makes her more believable, I think, than pretty much any NPC I've interacted with in VR. The way she talks with you, the way she reacts to you, she remembers things you do and say and references them later. And it's just, she feels so real. And it's the way that they juxtapose that with the fact that you're her imaginary friend that she created just makes it feel even more, just, it feels so cool. And it's just great because she's the only one that can see you and talk to you. So it's almost like you're her private little buddy that she talks with, and it's so cool. It's really well done. One of the others is Pavlov got a new update. It's more than doubled in price, which I was shocked to see. It went from $9.99 to $24.99.
Wow.
Which I knew they've been talking about doing that, but it just seemed to, I don't know, it sort of shocked me because the update only added some things that had been sort of already tested, and it didn't seem like a big update to
Were they
mark
in
the
early
price
access?
increase. They are still, yeah. Even
it's
after the
still in
price
early
hike.
access.
Yeah.
See, from a developer's perspective, that makes sense to me. They're trying to get people into an early kind of buggy version of the game, and then adding more and more content. So I mean, Beat Saber did this as well. They started early access at $19.99 and then went up to 33 or whatever it was. It makes sense to me just in terms of like the expense of developing a game and pushing in a bunch of features like that over time. Especially if you're coming out saying we are early access and we're trying to make it this great thing, and then there's an expectation of more value.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just, I guess to me, after 2.5 years of being that same price, it just seemed kind of arbitrary timing. But I guess, I mean, if they had it planned, the communication wasn't as good as it could have been.
Communication is a big thing.
Exactly. That's the thing, right? Usually, the way I've seen developers do it the best is when they say it's going up in price on this date, so you have a week still to buy it at this price. And then after that, it's on you, sort of thing, right? The only other thing is that obviously Pavlov is coming to Quest like next month, right? And I just wondered maybe if there's maybe if it's some sort of pricing parity thing there that they're going for, or although Maybe I remember them saying it was going to be free or something on Quest, but I can't remember. But,
And the other interesting thing too that it does is it puts it at the same price as Onward, which has always been $24.99. And now
Yeah.
Onward also has custom maps, which was kind of the big feature Pavlov had over Onward. And so now those games are very, very similar in terms of price and content. But the interesting thing is Onward, when it comes to Quest, its custom maps are going to work on Quest with cross-play across all platforms. I don't know how they've managed to do that, but they claim that it'll happen, which is incredibly impressive to have custom map support on Rift, on Quest, on Vive, and crossplay on all three headsets. That's going to be pretty amazing.
And
so
that's
I'm
a
really
lot of engineering hours too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that studio continues to impress me because Dante Buckley, he dropped out of college and taught himself everything he knows just to create Onward as his dream game. He's built a studio. He has a team now. He's turned down job offers from like Valve and all these other companies to stay indie. And it's really, really, really admirable. And I think he's done a great job. Onward's easily still one of the best VR games.
Yeah, I met him at OC6. He was a real personable, down-to-earth guy too. I wish him all the best success for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna have him on a future episode. Hopefully, I've talked to him about it. So, yeah, shout out to Dante, doing
Yo,
good stuff.
Dante. Hey.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Audica, I think, is full release now as well this week. And it came out on PSVR, which is another rhythm shooting game, but it is very different. Comparing that to Pistol Whip I mean, they include music and shooting guns, but that's about the only similarities they have. Audica is much more about standing still, shooting targets as they come to the beat of the music, rather than going through a level and shooting enemies. And the music style is different as well. Audica has a lot of different styles, and it's by Harmonix. It's good though. It's another good rhythm game, so I recommend it.
Jamie, I feel like you have been doing hand cues to let me know you have a comment there.
I was going to ask Denny. When you decided to release in November, did you have a sense that it was going to be such a busy month? Because I feel like this is probably the biggest month of VR releases ever. We have Stormland next week. We have Doctor Who next week. Curious Tale. There's a Beat Saber update today. What we just listed up earlier.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Rocket League music and Beat Saber.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should ask. Are you hearing a lot of audio spillover from my end?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Is there like a mute function in?
If you take the headset off, it'll go muted for a second.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, sorry. It's a bit of a circus around here right now because we're obviously launching today, and everybody's like nervously watching different assets and different reviews coming out, and all of that stuff.
Well, we'll be wrapping up after the interview, so you can get back to it.
Yeah. So yes, we did. The short answer is yes. We did know that it was going to be a crazy month for releases. And what do I have to say about that? I have to say that Oculus was really cool to kind of talk to and strategize a bit about that. Originally, we were pushing for an August launch of this year, but decided that and with Oculus's kind of consultation and help, that we could polish it up a bit more and target it for more of like a holiday season launch. And I think we're going to do better ultimately because of those choices. And even though we're releasing in a really dense month of title releases, I still think we're going to do okay. We've always known that Pistol Whip would hit a very kind of specific niche of player. It's the player that wants to jump in and get a rewarding experience in like 10 to 15 minutes, with very little like uptick in terms of learning curve. So I still think we're going to perform really well against those bigger titles.
Cool. Okay. Do we have any other comments, David, that we need to address?
No, people are chatting about Pistol Whip, talking about Audica some. It looks like Wolves on the Wall. Some people are appreciating that shout out. They like that one. Some people are noticing some issues with the Quest version, but I'm sure most of these are things you already know about, Denny. Some issues with the menu and stuff like that. Just weird little QA issues that I'm sure have been reported already.
Yeah, we have. I mean, as with all games that ship with bugs, we have a bug log that this game is going to be updated like weekly, so there's a bunch of stuff we're not sweating or worrying about too much.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Hey, let's move on to our hot topic of the week. So the hot topic is VR's killer app. Is there one? Does one exist? Do we need one? Do we already have one? Is one coming? Is it pistol whip? What do we got going on here? So let's start over here. Ian, I'm really curious about your opinion. What is the VR killer app in your opinion, if it exists already?
Great question. I'm gonna say what we're doing right now, right? In Denny is in Vancouver, right? Jamie over there is in London.
Finally.
You're in Seattle, and you are in Silicon Valley. So we're 5 people, completely different parts of the planet, and we feel like we're present together recording this podcast. I know there's a long way to go until we want to do this all day long for our jobs or even for fun. The headsets still give us headaches after 20 minutes. But yeah, I've talked to people at Valve, I've talked to people at Oculus, and teleportation and feeling like you're present and there with someone else who's far away is the killer app. Everything the question, a better question is what's the killer app for the headsets we have today, right? And that's where we start talking about things like Beat Saber and Pistol Whip, where you can get in and out really quickly. The moment you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, you just take the headset off. You come back when you're ready, and get a really exhilarating feeling very, very fast. And then, just put it away if you don't have a lot of time for it in your life right now. Those are my thoughts, at least.
Jamie, how about you? Do we have a killer app, or are we still waiting on something?
So I've actually been saying to Ian and David today, there's this interesting thing is that recently we changed our review score system and we went to a 5-star system because we felt we'd probably end up using the wide range of scores a bit more often. Now, as of today, we've been on that system for maybe a month and a bit, and we have 2 5 out of 5s. We've never given perfect scores before. We now have 2 5 out of 5s. And there's a good chance, let's say by the end of the month, that might move up to 3 5 out of 5 stars. I'll say
I wonder what
completely
game he's talking about.
No, nothing. And to me, and as I was just saying, me and Denny were just saying, it's an incredibly packed month of releases as well. These couple of weeks of releases don't feel like a VR release cycle. They feel like the mainstream video game industry release cycle, at least in my opinion. We've got a couple of AA games, we've got a lot of really great middle ground stuff, and then we've got some really cool lower level indie stuff as well, all releasing in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So for me, it's not so much about the killer app anymore as the feeling that developers are starting to really grasp it, and that we are seeing more consistently excellent releases now than we are searching for that one thing that everybody wants, right? Because everyone wants something different out of VR. Ian wants teleportation. David wanted Skyrim, and look what he got. He got Asgard's Wrath, right? And I think for you, you'd say that Asgard's Wrath is a VR killer app, right?
No, I don't think I would.
All right, fine. Thanks, man.
Well, I mean, my point that I want to make is I don't think that conversation of what a killer app is or what the killer app will be existed for other mediums very much. And I think a killer app is something that you define retroactively. After something has been out, you look back and say, "Oh, that was the killer app." You can't predict it.
It depends. When a console launches, that's when people are very, very speculative about what it might be, right? I remember when the PlayStation 3 launched, everyone was discussing what the killer app would be because the Xbox 360 already had like Halo 3 and Gears of War. And so people were like, well, what is the answer for the PS3 that will make people start buying the PS3? And it was, I guess some people would say it was Metal Gear Solid 4 or whatever. And
yeah,
I think
it just shifts too much because of the way VR is. Like even in chat right now, I have some people saying they want VR to be more like an overall operating system like in Shadowrun rather than directory approach
exactly.
like we have now. You have another person here in chat saying Chris Richardson thinks it's movies and TV sharing like Big Screen and Plex. That's his killer app for VR. Or you have people thinking, oh, I think Beat Saber is already the killer app, or VR chat's what I do it every day. That's my killer app. And I just think that trying to search for the like holy grail of VR experiences is a little misguided. I think the mindset should be on making the best VR that we can, and just letting it happen.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. Is I think we're getting there is on instead of just this one thing that's doing that.
Yeah.
I feel like we're all leveling out now.
Yeah, you guys are cluing into the same thing, but like, let's just be real here. VR's killer app, that's all investor speak nonsense.
Yeah.
Like
true.
that isn't how any like super progressive disruptive technology works generally. There's not one single thing. And you're both right. It's VR's killer app, maybe arguably the metaverse, like once we have something that's really compelling that you dive into every day, and it's a complete holistic social structure, and it looks good and sounds and feels good, and you're able to work in it and live in it and socialize in it. But that's still quite a ways off, as we all know.
Right.
But the killer app is really just a broad adoption. The more people that are in VR, they're going to pick out their favorite things. Like there is no killer app. I hate hearing that on Twitter and LinkedIn. Like, just stop.
It's a very trite phrase.
I only ever hear it whenever someone doesn't want to get a VR headset. They use it as a reason not to. No one ever says, "Oh, that's the killer app. That's why." No, they say, "What? Well, what is the killer app? I don't care about Beat Saber. I don't care about this. So what's the killer app?" No, that's what people say as a response.
Yeah, because they don't understand what it is.
Right.
Next time somebody asks you that question, what is the killer app for VR? Say, I don't know. What's the killer app for your computer? What about your phone?
Exactly. What's the killer app for TV?
Yeah, or the TV. Right. What's the killer
well, that
app
was
for
The
TV?
Office. That's obvious. I mean,
yeah, I do agree though that term really can cause quite an interesting conversation. It's very subjective. So, who knows? Maybe something will come out that is universally understood. Like maybe it'll be a metaverse. Maybe it'll be, something Facebook puts out or something Valve puts out or something a third party puts out. Who knows? But right now, there are plenty of things that are totally killer in VR that don't actually deserve that title, but they are definitely awesome. So depending on who you are.
I would say we have definitely reached the point where there is enough good VR content that I could reasonably imagine a world where there is a amazing VR experience out there for everyone.
Yeah.
I think regardless of your interest, there is something great out there that would probably convince you that VR is worth it. 100%. It's just a matter of getting it in their hands and having them try it. That's the struggle.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think we need the hand tracking first for that to really be fully true.
True.
But you're right. I mean, just we need the hand tracking to unlock it for a whole category of people.
Yeah.
And I think Kyle's avatar has frozen.
Uh-oh. Yeah, can you still hear me?
We can hear you, but I think we're going to be transitioning to the interview segment anyway. So, thank you everyone for chatting with us. I hope you don't mind, Kyle's, but since my avatar isn't frozen, I'll do the outro and
I'll take over
to the interview for you.
Go for it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, your disembodied voice can guide me if you need to. But thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the VR Download here, where we talked about all the latest news and releases. And but now we're going to transition over to the interview segment, where Ian is going to chat with Denny about a little game called Pistol Whip that you might have heard of. And we're going to have a great time. They're going to go teleport over there. And make sure you tune in every Thursday here on YouTube at Upload VR for the VR Download, where we have a new episode and a live chat with a developer live on the stream. And check out uploadvr.com for our latest news and reviews, like our Pistol Whip review is now live. And we'll have more great stuff throughout the week and into the future. And next week, our Stormland review will be live from Jamie. And so thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you keep watching for the full interview. We're going to
Denny.
Teleport them over there. Yep, there he is. Cool.
Also,
send you guys over.
Oh no, don't worry about it. We'll do it next week.
Going over there, Denny. Send us over, Heaney. Oh, here we go. We're back.
Sorry, I'm blocking my mic because there's office noise.
Yeah, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. I'm so appreciative of you joining us today. To be clear, I want to sort of capture the moment in time. So, when do you, as a developer, hit publish, or what is the physical process of making your game live to the world?
Wow, that's a huge question. How do I break
the very last process? I mean, do you have to hit send
sure.
or publish on every platform, and how recently did you do that compared to when we're talking right now?
Right. Well, I mean, so I think what was different about Pistol Whip was mainly that we have an active leaderboard, and there's a bunch of modifiers that place you in different kind of filtering orders on the leaderboard. If you're using Deadeye or whatever. Anyways, as a live product, we had to account for different SDKs that would serve leaderboard functionality. So it wasn't just a matter of like, oh, let's get a build in 2 weeks prior and then ship it, because we had all these leaderboard knock-ons that needed to be accounted for at the ecosystem level. So whatever their SDK was had to be implemented. So there was a bit of a mad dash to make sure that all the leaderboard stuff was stable and shippable, I guess. But other than that, it was a pretty normal process.
Did you sleep? Did your team sleep?
Oh,
How much sleep?
Depends who you talk to on the team. Most of them slept, but there was a few of us that didn't sleep much over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to get the picture of. But are we live? Okay, so I guess we weren't live here. I guess I'll do an introduction here again to make sure we catch up everyone. So I'm here with Denny Unger. He's the CEO, creative director at Cloudhead Games, and they've just released Pistol Whip. So that's a $25 game available for all major VR headsets, with a PSVR version still in the works. Do you have any expectation for when you'll be able to get that PSVR version out?
We're not announcing anything yet, but it's been something in the works and planned for a long time. But it'll be sooner than later.
So the I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I want to talk about sort of what Cloudhead is as a studio and how you arrived at Pistol Whip, because your first two games are completely different from Pistol Whip, and I don't. I think it's probably a surprise out there to people that you arrived at something so different from those first two. So I'm curious about that process. How did you arrive at such a different game?
Yeah. Interestingly, it's not that far off from kind of the studio sensibilities in the first place, because for the longest time we talked about, oh, wouldn't it be awesome to do Indiana Jones? Let's take that scene for scene and rebuild it as a VR experience, like some kind of movie narrative that you get pulled through, that you can't stop as a user. You just have to kind of react to it. So the whole studio is a big fan of just movies in general. And when we started, getting into action movies, and then John Wick came out, there was this kind of moment where we're like, well, so what if we took action movies and then we broke them down based on, how they're actually editing those scenes and pulling a user through a scene, or rather the viewer in this case, through a scene because of the orchestration and because of the soundtrack. And they're doing these really smart cuts beat for beat as you kind of move through an action sequence. So we're like, how could we translate that to a game? And in VR, that would be sticky and something we could accomplish with, a medium budget and not a ton of time. So that was really kind of the starting point for what Pistol Whip eventually became was, how do you drag a user through an unstoppable action sequence and just really tap into a reactive mind more than anything else.
Mm. The reason I was bringing up the multiple versions of the game was I got an update for the Quest version probably an hour before your launch was scheduled to go. So it was clearly an evolving product even to the last minute. And I guess I'm wondering, how do you manage stress as you approach that finish line? How do you stay focused and not crumble?
Well, when you come, so there's the sort of normal process for this stuff is you're working towards a release candidate, and that's being tested by a lot of different people, and you start kind of triaging. You go through a list of priorities. Well, every game ships with bugs. That's just the way it is. You can't account for every use case, so you end up having kind of a backlog of, okay, we got to fix this and this. Okay, when does that actually get patched in and fixed? But leading into launch, you start identifying very high level, like, oh, this is going to crash the game, or this is not going to, or this is going to make the game unstable. So any kind of like last minute pushes are all in service to maintaining game stability more than anything else.
Mm.
So if you saw anything like that, that's what it was. In terms of us crumbling, we, every game studio has a different way of kind of functioning. We tried really hard on the last two projects not to crunch, but inevitably there's always a couple people, or three people where they're just wearing too many hats and they have to work more than anybody else on the team. Everybody worked very, very hard on this production. It was very much a passion project in that way, but the wheels definitely start coming off at the end when you're just, you've pushed it as hard as you possibly can, both physically and mentally. And it's kind of the nature of video game production as much as you try to get away from it, even when you're like super conscientious of, overtime. It's really, really, it's just a super difficult medium. It's not, I would say it's even harder than making a movie. Those guys get paid for crazy overtime. They expect it, but they're dealing with a linear narrative and nothing ever changes from that. And the edit is the edit, and there is no bug fixing, and there are no user use cases or knock-ons from users breaking a system or doing something unexpected. Like, video game production is just hard, just flat out hard, period. And VR is an interesting multiplier of that. So you have kind of known things that you're up against in video game production, but then you add VR's unknowns to that matrix, and it's a force multiplier, very difficult. And I don't know, you just force yourself through it, I guess.
And so I guess, what does launch day look like in that scheme of ongoing development? Because you mentioned wanting to do updates almost weekly, I believe. And I want to understand, is there a breather here? Are you able to take a breather? And what are you looking for now from the community? So what sort of feedback are you hoping to receive?
Yeah, we're a pretty small studio, so we're 13 right now. So what we kind of do, or what we try to do, is kind of do rolling time off for different people. Just in terms of like the mechanics of running a studio, it's just trying to give people adequate time to take some downtime after completing a project. At the same time, while making sure we have support for the community because they're expecting different things. So that's all in the works. Yeah, in terms of like updates, we do plan, kind of like bi-weekly updates or monthly updates. And again, we're always triaging. We're always like measuring what is most important to release as a feature, or what is most important to release as a fix for a problem that might bubble up, because we can't test for everything despite best efforts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're hoping from the community is just we have a personal backlog of there's a bunch of wish list items we have for what we want to see go into the game. We're hoping for a pretty like open and liberal back and forth process with the community so that we understand what they want versus what we think we want and that they want, so that we can open that kind of conversation and dialogue. Of course, we're always going to be, fielding bug reports. That stuff's just going to happen, and we're going to, prioritize them as they come in.
Pistol Whip is such a fascinating game to me, just in so many fronts. And that's, I guess I'll just start off with my sort of range of experience with it. So you kind of start off on normal mode with one gun, firing at these people that are coming in, these shadows that are running in from the sides, and getting sort of to memorize where they're coming from, seeing where the platforms and the buildings kind of create spaces for them to run out for you to aim at. And I want to say it's maybe one or two playthroughs through the game when you start realizing your aim doesn't need to be perfect, for you to still hit most of these targets that are running out in various places. And I played the game on Index at first for quite a lot of hours. And then within the last few weeks, I got access to to the Quest version. And it's such an amazing example of the differences between wired and wireless gaming, because I absolutely adore the sound on Index. Those speakers are amazing right off your ears. I love the visuals when it's running at 120 frames per second with that resolution. It's an absolutely gorgeous experience, and my eyes feel more comforted in there compared with even say a Quest. Um, but then I started getting to hard. I started practicing the levels on Quest and getting in with that beat. And I started realizing that because I'm wireless on Quest, I actually feel confident enough to jump into the air and bring my pistol down on a bad guy at just the right beat. And that's something I didn't feel confident enough with a tether running down my back to a PC to feel like I could do without harming myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such a fascinating difference because yeah, the Index I could play for hours because visually comfort is off the charts for me. I feel great coming out of there after an hour where I might feel a little bit of a headache or a little sore after maybe that same length of session in a Quest. um, I want to know sort of, that's my impression, but what, as you as a developer on the developer side of things, how do you take all these things into account? Are these things you notice when you're developing the game, and how does that relate to the end product?
Yeah, I mean, without writing a novel, I think we knew just as a studio in the current marketplace of VR, which is it's always been a trepidatious market where you have to place some pretty safe bets. Um, our studio didn't place safe bets with the gallery. We went for Call of the Starseed and Heart of the Emberstone. We went for something that we thought people wanted. We thought, oh, let's shoot for the moon. Let's try to really bury a user in a deeply narrative, very immersive experience, high quality, high budget visual values, really detailed interaction systems, all this stuff. We did that, and if this had been a normal video game market, we would have been tapping into that mist like portion of the market, which would have made it economically viable. But VR has had this very slow growth curve that we've all seen, right? So, in getting to your question, the reason Pistol Whip became what it was because we had to look at what was working on the market, kind of doing a really deep dive in dissecting the top 10 titles that were always being played or experienced on all marketplaces, and then really digging down and picking apart the values and the pillars of those experiences, and then trying to apply it to kind of our narrative sensibilities in terms of what we wanted a person to feel when they played a game like this. So but we knew at that point, we recognized that the only way to remain a viable VR studio of medium size would be to build something that hit those marks. And in order to do that, we also had to account for PSVR, we had to account for Quest, And so basically from bottom to top, high end to visually low end, we had to figure out something that would work on all platforms. So we started from that premise, like what's the visual bar we actually have to hit in order to deliver on all of these platforms, and then secondarily, what's resonating with users, and what is onboarding new users, so that we can help the market grow just kind of in general with whatever we're bringing out.
I think it's a fair question to ask. Do you think Pistol Whip's going to sell headsets?
Yes,
Hmm.
I do.
That's
I say that because that was a significant part of design. We had a number of different pillars for what we needed to hit, and one of them was, if you don't understand this game in the first 30 seconds, then we've already failed. So I believe it's the kind of game that you can put on a family member or a relative or a stranger at the bus stop on a quest, and that they will viscerally understand. There's no I put my dad in the other night. My dad's getting up there. He's 77, or he's getting aged, and he. I didn't have to explain anything to him. His body took over because it was just this visceral understanding of survival, right?
I agree there, but I still I got to talk about the people that forget to dodge, right?
Yes.
Why does that happen? Why
Mm-hmm.
I don't know? Are they trained by flat screens? But like,
Yes.
I put it on a couple people, and they just forget that. Oh, my head actually moves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
It-
yeah.
so my dad is actually a good example because he knew from prior experience that VR allowed this liberal freedom of motion. So I guess he took that part for granted. We're still at that phase where if you put a completely green person into VR, you have to tell them to physically move their body because exactly that they've been acclimated to look at a 2D screen and have no impact on movement at all.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I think let me focus this question specifically on you as sort of the leader of your team. You've been through the trenches of the early days of VR, and you've had to keep a studio together through that evolution of finding out what people actually want. And you've spent the last year on the development of this game, Pistol Whip, that released right before you came into the studio, which is an experimental piece of software itself. But I want to understand sort of, do you ever take a breather and take a deep breath and realize, I don't have to worry so much about uh, the studio having trouble making enough money or keeping all the people employed that you've been employing for this length of time? Is there, like a threshold in your mind for how many units Pistol Whip needs to sell in order for this weight to be lifted off your shoulders? And is there a weight on your shoulders?
Mm. Well, there was for a long time. There was a significant weight on the studio's shoulders, but I could say as a broad statement to the VR market as a whole, I've seen so many VR studios close down over the last 2 to 3 years. And these were people that were arguably putting out great VR products, and it was just simply because the marketplace wasn't big enough to support them or their vision. Again, it's like this fractional market thing. If this had been flat screen PC market, they would have been fine, but it's VR, and we're still building up the player base. And as a studio, we rode that same kind of curve, that up and down, like, oh, well, are we going to be okay to here and to here and to here in terms of our burn rate and our runway? Cloudhead, thankfully, even without taking investment, has done that, and not many studios can say that. So we've been doing okay, and more recently we've been doing even more okay. And I can't get into all the reasons why, but we'll talk to that soon. So Pistol Whip, um, I think my worries are very different. They're not so much financially based at this point. Um, they're just, you know what? Honestly, it just comes down to having a studio of people that work and build products together. They spend more time here than they do with their families at the dinner table. So making people happy here at the studio has actually become my worry. That's actually my most significant worry. Pistol Whip, I think, is going to do just fine. I think it's going to compete and it's going to do very well on market. And I said this earlier, but my validation for that kind of came from a lot of our peers in the industry who've been doing this a long time and gave us some very candid feedback behind the scenes saying, you guys did kind of the right mix of things here and it's going to do very well on market. And they kept telling us that, and we kept kind of a cautious approach to whether our friends were just blowing smoke up our ass or if that was a true statement. But as we get more reviews and previews coming out from the player base, we're starting to believe that a lot more. Anyways, I think it's going to do good. I think it's going to do very well for our studio, and I also think it will be a great onboarding tool for new users.
Let me ask about hand tracking. I don't know how long this has been. This has been a really fun conversation, and I don't know how many more questions I have left. The one I want to ask about is hand tracking and how I was really impressed with the hand tracking at Oculus Connect 6, except it didn't seem great for games. As a developer of several games, I have to ask, what do you think the applications are there for you?
Yeah, I personally am really excited about hand tracking. I've been excited about it since Leap Motion was doing all their incredible work with hand tracking, and I think a few of them have moved on since to Oculus to help with that initiative. I like in terms of an onboarding thing, it's the first thing new users look for when they put a headset on. It's like, well, where's my hands? Once you have that in play, it's a significant friction point thing that it's another one of these friction points that are removed from the equation, which is just going to help the ecosystem in general. As a developer, I'm actually pretty excited about it in terms of uh, you know deep dives into narrative and expressive and content and doing these tiny manipulations within an environment, because there's no better surrogate than your hands to do these little things, even though you're losing some tactile haptic feedback in that loop of things. I still think it's a more potentially compelling way to interact with the environment. um, that said, so what I kind of think will happen is that will be brought up to a significant level where it works great. And at that point, you're going to be relying on secondary peripheral support. So if I want to play a gun game, well, I'm going to buy a gun controller, something that's really only giving me maybe some tracking data, but it's giving me haptics and it's giving me a trigger to push. The future is definitely in hand tracking. I've always believed that. So I have high hopes for it.
Interesting. So would you say uh, you can't play pistol whip with just finger guns,
You
or
can. You could, but you would lose haptic feedback, which I think is actually a pretty significant downer. Like in that type of experience, you really, and in some cases, you really need that level of haptic feedback. So that being said, I've also seen at sort of small micro haptic devices like thimbles that slip onto the end of your finger that deliver a haptic impulse. I'm hoping we see solutions like that, like as peripheral technologies that help with these type of experiences.
Interesting. Well, that's a lot of the questions I had prepared. I think it's interesting that you came in here right after sort of all these people downloading your game, and you mentioned sort of, I mean, is the office really like computer screens are open and everyone's got different dashboards that are letting them see how many downloads the game's getting, and uh, are you watching the numbers intently and sort of trying to stay
Yes.
calm?
So like, Paul's in his office right now, kind of jealously guarding the builds and seeing how things are going. Denise is upstairs and she's watching computers. And then our main kind of meeting and ideation room is full of everybody else, and they've all got their phones out. Everybody's watching feeds, and there's a main TV where we're displaying everything. Everybody's pretty excited to watch, the feedback come in, and we're talking about it. We're here celebrating, but we're also trying to be reactive to whatever is coming down the pipe. I guess the only thing I want to say to the our new users and our new kind of family of ecosystem users is that we have a very long roadmap for Pistol Whip that we plan on supporting really diligently. So yeah, I mean, even cost is something that it's going to come up. It comes up with every game release, and users, identifying what they think is an appropriate cost for this or that. We came out with the price that we came out with essentially because we have a very long roadmap in front of us, and users are going to get a very high value add to the thing that they're buying. It's not just going to sit stagnant. There's a lot of stuff coming out, and a lot of it is free, and we have a high confidence in that, so they should feel good with their purchase.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for coming up on this podcast right after launching your game. And thank you for everyone for tuning in. And please leave us comments on all the Pistol Whip videos. Come check our review if you haven't seen the game, don't have a good sense of what it is. And subscribe to the VR Download and check with us next week.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Ian.
much, Denny.
Yeah, take care.